Hey, good morning, Steve. How are you doing?
Good, Melanie. How are you doing?
Pretty good, thank you.
Good,
How's
good.
your morning been so far?
Busy.
Yeah,
Yeah, Monday morning.
Monday morning, get to it already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. How's your morning been?
So far, so good.
Excuse
Yeah,
me.
I'm just really
Good.
glad to see the sun out and the haze gone. It's nice to
Yeah,
see a clear blue sky.
yeah. It was kind of flat on Saturday and Sunday a little bit, huh, with all that smoke.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm just really grateful for the sun today and I'm holding on to that gratitude.
Me too.
Yeah.
Thank goodness it's gone.
Yes. So last week we talked about some of the very common, very typical cognitive distortions or unhelpful thinking habits that people have
Yes,
that, when they're unhelpful, they often run us into trouble, make us have
absolutely.
negative and problematic feelings, which then lead us to making choices that may be unhealthy, maybe not right for us. Yeah. Did you find yourself engaging in any of those unhelpful thinking habits last week?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I
Me
think
too.
it's these are. I mean, it kind of feels like our stress levels rising collectively.
Yes.
So I've been very conscious about thinking positively about stuff and putting a positive spin on almost anything.
Yes,
So
that's
even the weather, I just thought to myself, what could be worse? We could have that big, huge snowstorm that we had a couple Septembers ago,
that's true. Yes.
right? And so there's always things that could be worse than what they are now.
Yes.
You just
Yeah.
have to go look for that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I found myself engaging in all or nothing thinking, like um especially with the weather. I kind of felt like, I gotta have my one summer day yesterday. It's got to look like this. And I wasn't into any gray. I wasn't even focusing on the fact that it could,
Yeah,
it could be a little good and a little bad. There could be parts of the day that were disappointing or parts of the day that didn't rise to my expectations. I just focused on being all in. And then, yeah, at the end of the day, I was quite disappointed because
yes,
there were a lot of negative parts of my day yesterday. But there were also a lot of really positive parts that I
yes,
wasn't able to think about at that moment.
yeah, absolutely.
Got me into trouble a little bit.
Yes, because you were thinking about that preconceived expectation that you wanted to achieve.
Yes, yes. And it just didn't pan out that way.
No,
Yeah.
no.
So this week we're talking about six more. Now there's probably even more than that. I think last week we covered 5 or 6, and
Yeah.
so this is another 6. So that's about 10 or 11 altogether. But these are the ones that cognitive behavioral therapists are most familiar with
Okay.
or talk about the most. And one of them is called overgeneralizing, which means when we have an experience and we have one negative experience and we apply it to all future experiences. So we experience something a certain way and we apply that experience to all similar situations or similar experiences. It's pretty common or pretty easy to identify an overgeneralization statement with words like always or never, everybody, and nobody. So
Oh
I
yeah.
might, I might have failed a class on maybe I failed my math class when I was in school. And then I'll say how I'm never good at math. I will always fail at
Yeah.
anything that asks me to do math.
Oh
People,
yeah.
I bet you you've heard that kind of thing with people and jobs.
Well, actually, I was just thinking the example I thought about would actually be employers.
Ah,
So it's
okay.
not unusual for us to run into an employer that had a really negative experience hiring somebody with a disability,
Yeah,
and they just generalize that completely.
totally.
So I mean, that's where we really need to have some fierce conversations and say, no, it's not always like that. But,
Yeah,
you know, I think people do that in generally, right? And
yeah,
so if someone has like you brought up school, there's a lot of folks we support that really, quite frankly, have never had a positive experience in school,
that's right.
because it always sort of highlights their weak areas and areas, lack of skills. And so
Yeah.
there really people are hesitant on going back to school because they just based on that one negative experience. So
Mm-hmm.
That affects people's lives an awful lot.
Yeah. Going back to your example about employers, I think that a lot of our isms come from overgeneralizing. We meet one
Yes,
person who belongs to a particular group of people, and then we don't like that person, or that person just, says something to offend us or upset us. And then we assume that all people within that group will be the same way.
absolutely.
Yeah, which can really run us into a lot of trouble and be very unfair to
Yeah.
the rest of the folks.
Well, I think it's evident in this day and age too, right, that that's happening an awful lot.
Yeah.
If you look at all the protests and movements that are happening
Yeah.
all over the world, right, it's about that, right? People have had a negative experience and then they generalize that
Yeah.
to
That's
groups of
right.
people. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes for a very difficult world, and
it
a very
does.
combative
It does,
environment.
right? It takes the individuality out of relationships with
That's,
people when you do that.
that's exactly it. Yes. Thank you. That's right. Another cognitive distortion is mental filter. When we pay attention to certain evidence, but not other evidence, like paying attention only to experiences that support our negative belief. So that mental filter can be, see, I told you that person or that situation or that experience, that activity was never going to work out. But I was only paying attention to the parts of that experience that didn't work out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So one of the examples that I think about in terms of today and with the coronavirus is, when people have little tiny symptoms, like a little bit of a scratchy throat or a bit of a cough, or they just feel a little nauseated or tired, and they automatically think, oh, I must have the coronavirus. I
Oh,
must
yeah.
be, I must be sick. But they might not be thinking about the fact that they don't have the fever, or they don't have the troubles with energy, or the
Yeah.
loss of the sense of smell. Was it that was the other one?
Yes.
Or they don't have the headaches. They're just kind of focusing in on the evidence that points to what they believe is true in the first place.
Yeah, and I think I mean, as far as the coronavirus, I think there's a lot of a lot of information and a lot of misinformation, and so that's a good example that I think
Yeah.
people are encountering, right? If they have a runny nose or a slight cough, in everyone's household, because the weather changes, your furnace
Yeah.
goes on, and that automatically brings in dry air. So we should expect to have a slight cough, right? Because
Yes.
it's dry. But I imagine people get really paranoid about that.
Yeah.
So even, when you're coming into the office and you're filling out that checklist, it's broken down into all those symptoms, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean you have COVID. It just means you have one of the symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah. This one could also be applied to people that you work with who are looking for a job,
Yeah.
because they might feel pretty unsuccessful at their job. They might feel kind of doomed to fail, and so they come home from their day pinpointing all the things that prove that they're not good at this job.
Yeah.
So, see, I messed up with that order. My boss had to come and help me fix it. See, my colleague kind of looked at me sideways at one point in the day, and so they're telling me that I'm not doing my job properly just by their behavior. But they're not people. Those folks are then not paying attention to, well, actually, they had a colleague come up and say, "Great job, thanks for helping me out," or that the employer had recognized them as, doing something more efficient than other people have done in the past. So mental filter takes a belief that we already have that's negative about ourselves, and it accentuates it by making us pay attention only to the evidence that tells us, yep, that negative belief is right. But unfortunately, we just kind of wash away all the positive stuff in the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then there's another one called disqualifying the positive. So you notice the positive, but you don't make it valuable. So
Mhm.
yesterday when I was on a bike ride with my family, it was very disappointing because I was focused on that expectation that I had for my family to be able to, ride their bikes up the hills and down the hills without stopping, without getting off their bike, without walking their bike. That didn't happen. And so I was focusing on the negative, focusing on the fact that they weren't riding their bikes continuously, focusing on the fact that they weren't happy riding their bikes the whole time, and that it wasn't the bike ride of the year like I thought it was going to be. But I was disqualifying the positive, which was
Yeah.
I wasn't looking and thinking about the fact that they were walking their bike up and down the hill. They were still keeping up to me. They were still persevering. And though it was difficult, they were getting through it.
Yes.
And I was just not giving enough credit to those positive things. And I ended up being pretty upset about the whole thing.
Yeah. And it probably wrecked your afternoon.
Part of it, yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
It took me a little while, but I did finally acknowledge the positive. I did finally acknowledge that they were trying, that they hiked really well after that. Even though we're not very proficient bike riders yet, they have become very proficient hikers and walkers. So, being able to balance that and really focus in then on the positive.
Yeah. Do you find maybe, Melanie, that people are doing that because the times that we're in, and
That they are or they aren't?
always bombarded, that people are always thinking of the negative a lot more because that's what's being given to us and shown to us through our media.
Yeah. We are surrounded by negativity, even more so now, because that's all the news can focus on are the infection rates going higher, who's dying, who's lying, who's not doing, who's hurting another person. Yeah. I think that we are bombarded, and we have to really intentionally work on surrounding ourselves with more positive and just not allowing all that negativity to.
Yeah, we need to change the lens in how we're looking at life right now.
Yes. Yeah. Change those glasses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it too, right? Is that people are surrounded by negativity, and so they're looking at things from a negative point of view. And so that's a good point. I mean, we're lucky that we get to go outside still. And we're lucky that we get, in Calgary, that we have all these trails and everything's really accessible to us. Because in some parts of the world, there probably isn't.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And so, I know for me, I always have to constantly think of that, remind myself that I'm lucky that I get to go out and participate in activities.
I agree. Yeah. Now, all that negativity, that stress that we feel when we're confined by the negativity, when it presses in on us, even, our best efforts to stay positive and to focus on the positive, that negativity, I'm finding, Steve, is causing another cognitive distortion in behavior, which is blaming.
Oh, yeah.
People are focusing on blaming someone else for this trouble. Or, some of us have a default of blaming ourselves. Like, I must have done something wrong, or, I don't know how to survive in this or cope with this, or I don't even know what the right thing is. And so I'm the one that's, causing the problems, or I'm the one to blame.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So that's a big one too, because that can also cause a lot of isms that we were talking about before. People against people. The blaming of other people. Yeah. Or, it's funny because people will feel self-blame. They'll criticize themselves in their head, like, oh, I must have done it wrong, or I must be wrong, but then they'll come out with other blame as a defensive reaction. Yeah. So blame is not helpful all the way around.
Well, and I'm wondering too, for me, I think I mentioned before, I don't like to deal on the negative. So quite often, though, I will look at my own behavior because, quite frankly, I'm the only person that can control my own behavior.
That's right.
I can't control other people, but I have total control over mine. And so I think that causes me to reflect a lot on stuff. But I also have a theory, too, is that being negative is a very comfortable feeling that people have.
Yeah.
Being happy and being positive, sometimes that's an unknown for people.
That's true.
We have a tendency to gravitate towards what we're comfortable with, whether it's positive or not.
That's true.
Right. And so I think we need to start, looking at the positive a lot more.
Well, and getting more comfortable with it, even when it doesn't feel comfortable at first.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like a new pair of pants, it feels kind of rough and starchy and constricting, but once we work through it, it can become a real comfortable situation.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe that's because this is a brand new situation for everyone on the face of this earth,
Every single one. Yeah.
right? So maybe, it takes a while for us to start getting that level of comfort back.
Yeah. Yeah. And it'll be a new kind of comfort. Our comfort zone is going to be shifted a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Two more cognitive distortions, one being minimizing. So you can minimize or you can maximize. You can minimize the positive or minimize the good or minimize even the extent of the problem. On the other hand, you can maximize it. You can maximize the negative. You can maximize the extent of the problem, both of which are two ends of the spectrum. So can be very unhelpful, can be very dysregulating.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking for a middle. You're looking for the balance in the middle. So, minimizing, for some folks, it might be things like if we're relating it to the coronavirus, I just have a slight cough. I've just only been, I'm only a little bit hot and
Mm-hmm.
not feeling well. I'm okay. I'm going to go out anyways and meet up with my friends. Or on the other hand, it can be maximizing. I've just got a little cough. I must be getting the coronavirus kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so make it much bigger than it has to be.
Yeah. I wonder too, is that people might minimize what we're going through right now, trying to look at it from a positive point of view.
Yeah.
But really, we need to look at it accurately.
That's right.
Because it is a big deal. It is a big issue. Like
Yes.
I don't think we should deny that. It's just
Right.
how we look at it and how our actions are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see us doing that or going one way or the other. So it's really, life is all about balance, is it not?
It is. That's right. That's exactly it with these cognitive distortions. You
Yeah.
don't want to be on either side of the extreme. You want to be in that middle, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah. Stuck in the middle.
Stuck in the middle. That's right. Labeling is the last one. And many of us do this to ourselves as well as to others. And when it's to ourselves, we often do it inside of our heads. But, this is where I listen for people when they say, I was really stupid that day when I da-da-da. And then I'll always go back and say, well, what do you mean you were stupid? It's a labeling. It's a putting of a label on top of yourself because of your behavior. But the problem is that you're labeling who you are inherently, not just your behavior.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay to label the behavior. It was a stupid thing to do, but not labeling ourselves, because once you label yourselves, it's hard to get out of that. You're kind of feeling stuck in that label.
Yeah, and I also, you know what, I'm glad you brought that up, because I really chat with people about the fact that we can always change our behavior. We can't really change who we are.
That's right.
We should accept who we are, but it's our behavior that we can change, because
Yes.
we have control over our behavior.
Yes.
And so I've always sort of thought that, right? It's I have control of my behavior. So you're absolutely right about labels. I think labels really are, they kind of stifle us and box us in.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was David Byrne from the Talking Heads has a song, don't box me in. So I often think of that, right? Because really that's what labels do. It kind of boxes us in, and then it stops us from growing and changing.
That's right. And it also does that if we use labels towards other people.
Absolutely.
Because if we just, minimize that person to being just a label, then we're not seeing them for who they are and all their gifts and talents and strengths either. We're not in community with those people.
Yeah.
So that's not giving everybody the full advantage either.
No, and we run into that through supported employment, right? I mean, we're always fighting that stigma.
Yes.
That folks with disabilities, aren't able to work.
Yeah.
Which we know is not true. But that label still persists, right? We're still combating that and still trying to change people's minds.
Yeah, isn't that funny about labels? They stick for a long time, don't they, Steve?
Absolutely.
So
and I find really labels kind of generalize things, right? And it does actually really objectify who people are.
That's right.
And I think, in my younger days when I was a real rebel, and my hippie days, I didn't like to be labeled at all whatsoever, right? And I find I'm still combating that, right? Still trying to, shrug off these labels that people give us and give each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's better to not let them take hold at all, or at least to just consciously, keep reminding ourselves of the way that we talk about ourselves or others, the way that we believe, like see each other, and just get to the real truth of it all.
Yes.
Which brings me to the next idea that we wanted to present in this video, which is, once we understand and identify these thoughts that we have, because we all have them at one time or another, how do we then challenge them? How do we change those habits that we have? Well, last time you and I talked, we did a mindfulness of thoughts, where we just acknowledged those thoughts and we labeled them for what they were, without judgment, without avoiding them or denying them. Today, I want to introduce a series of questions that people could ask themselves, kind of like a scientist would ask when they see like something from nature and they really want to get to know. Let's say they find a bone in a rock cliff and they want to get to know what this bone is. They just look at it objectively to see, yes, it is this, no, it is not that. And they, it's that process of elimination where they get to know really what this bone, what it belongs to, if it's of any significance at all. So there's a series of questions when we challenge negative thoughts that we can go through. And the one that I love, the two questions that go together that I love the best is, what evidence do you have that tells you this thought is correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then what evidence do you have that tells you this thought is incorrect? So for a thought like, I'm going to fail at this job.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to keep this job. I'm eventually going to get fired because I'm no good at keeping jobs. Well, I might look at the evidence that tells me that's true. Like, well, I've been fired from other jobs in the past. And, my career teacher, when I was a kid in high school, told me I was never going to make anything out of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Those are real facts. Like that really happened. And
Yes,
it can contribute to that belief. But that belief is not helpful because that belief gets people, leaving jobs over and expecting to leave jobs and not performing at their highest capacity because they expect they're going to be fired. Well,
absolutely.
I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be putting much effort into a job that I thought I was just going to get fired from anyways.
Yeah.
So then the other question is, what evidence do you have that tells you that thought is incorrect? And this is where you might have to get creative. So I might be looking at things like, well, you know what? My mom told me that I was always very industrious, creative. My mom told me I could, take anything that I found in the forest and make something out of it. Or my career coach told me that I had a really good attitude about people. I really enjoy connecting with people. So really looking for those skills and those strengths and those positive traits that allow you to see that, okay, that belief that I'm just going to lose this job because I'm no good at keeping a job is not entirely true. It's a little bit true because I've had troubles in that past, but it's not 100% true.
Yeah, you know what, Melanie, that's why we support people going through that process of self-discovery. Mm-hmm. Because it allows people to really focus on their hidden strengths and their hidden skills. And so I think really for anyone, self-discovery is probably one of the most important people can do for their career development.
Yes.
And not just for folks that we support, folks with disabilities, but for anyone. I mean, even for my kids.
Yes.
I find that I'm always pointing out their hidden strengths and no, this is actually what you're good at. And do you remember you did this well? Because we have a tendency not to forget about the positive things that we're capable of doing.
Yep.
I don't know if it's a societal thing that we kind of condition ourselves to only think about the negative things that we do, but yeah, I think really it's all about that.
Yeah.
It's so important to be comfortable in your own skin, feeling good about yourself.
And that'll radiate to all the areas of your life: career, relationships, physical, mental, all the areas. Yeah. So it's the healthiest thing you can do for yourself.
No, I totally agree.
And then a question of, well, am I trying, this thought that I have that I'm no good at keeping a job and I'm just bound to get fired, is there evidence that I'm missing? So I might, go and ask some questions to people that know me, like, am I really a failure when it comes to employment, or is there another way of looking at it? And I might find that, another career coach or a friend says, actually, Melanie, you've just never found the kind of job that really really works with your skills, with your talents. You've just always had the wrong job, you know. Well, oh, well, then it's not just me. It's, you know, I haven't found the right job yet.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think in regards to employment, it's a well-known fact that people change their careers 8 times in their work life. And so we often run into people who, you know, might have 6 or 7 jobs in a 3-year period because they're not finding that good match.
Yes. Yeah.
And that really wears down on people. Then they start to believe that, hey, maybe I'm just not good enough, period, to be working.
That blaming, it must be me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah, we run into that quite a bit.
Yeah, which is so heart-wrenching because it isn't just about a good match.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's all about finding that perfect match.
Yeah. It's also interesting to ask the question, what would a friend think about this situation? So if I asked a friend, what would they say? You know, often our friends are kinder to us than our own self-talk. And that is sometimes more motivating because we feel loved, we feel cared for. Whereas with our own critical self-talk, we feel very demeaned and put down and, you know, almost punished or disciplined, which doesn't motivate anybody to be their best selves.
Yeah. Here's another thing to think about too. Sorry to interject, but now that we're on that topic about not feeling good about yourself, is really as adults, we learn by our mistakes.
That's true.
So I often say to people, you know, when I started skiing, I didn't learn how to ski by doing really well. I actually learned by all my wipeouts about what not to do, right? And so in our society today, you know, especially with the younger generation, you know, we've instilled in the fact that they have to be picture perfect from the very beginning, and that's logically not true.
That's right.
Right?
We're keeping people from making mistakes because our society values perfection.
Yes.
And it's taken away not only the opportunity to make mistakes, but the glory in making mistakes. It's become more of a, oh, well, you know, I guess you didn't do it right the first time. There must be something wrong with you. But actually making mistakes is the whole, that's the impetus for learning. I mean, that's the only way that we learn.
There's enjoyment in failure. Contrary to what we hear, there is enjoyment in failure.
And you know what else there is in failure? Commonality.
Yes.
So we all do it. We can all embrace that part of our humanity and come together in full view, not hiding in shame or embarrassment, but just coming together and celebrating that we've made these failures such that we've been able to accumulate these skills, these experiences, this wisdom. I know.
Very, very true.
Yeah, I know. I love that. I love that whole idea of acknowledging that we are broken and that we all come together based on that commonality.
Yes.
And there's no shame in it.
No, and then what happens is that your relationship with people are unconditional.
Yes.
Unconditional acceptance, right?
Yes.
That's like a whole package deal, not just one piece of us.
Yeah. Yes,
yeah.
I love that. Another question, there's 2 more. One of the questions is, so like if you force yourself to look at the situation more positively, how can you look at it? How do you see it differently? So, you know, this whole idea of me losing this job is just inevitable. How do I look at that positively? Well, maybe I would look at that as, I've got this fear of failure. Or, wow, you know, I keep worrying about losing my job, but I haven't yet, you know, I must be doing something right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So finding the positive in this situation and seeing if you can turn it around. You know, that was a big one that Leanne told us about on a video a couple of weeks ago, was that she just kept taking all of her negative thoughts and turning them up on end and saying, what if I looked at this positively? And that's been a real game changer for her.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a good tool for people, right? Is to, you know, change things and look at it from a positive point of view.
Yes. Yes. And the last one is a really good one too. Will this matter a year from now? Right? So this negative thought that I'm having, will it matter a year from now or 5 years from now? All this stress that I'm putting into this negative thought and all the power that I'm letting it have over me and my behavior, does it really matter? Am I really going to remember this? Because if it's not a big deal, let it go.
Exactly.
Don't give it another thought.
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Don't sweat the small stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to put those questions up on the YouTube video site or description. description part so that people have access to it. And you can go through it, and it's not easy to go through. You might have to go it kind of mechanically first, pen and paper, just writing each answer down. But the more that you do that, it'll just become automatic, and you'll just be able to think it through eventually on the spot, wherever you are.
So that's a good example where the exercise itself is more important than possibly the outcome.
True. Yeah. The exercise itself will give you more information and wisdom and experience than the outcome. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Any
that sounds
questions?
like a good plan. No, I think that's actually, you said it eloquently. I think it's actually good timing to be talking about this.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah. So I thought for our mindfulness, I would keep in mind that it's tomorrow's the first day of fall.
Okay.
Or last day of summer today.
Yes.
And that I noticed going out on that walk and that bike ride yesterday that there's beautiful leaves being dropped from the trees, beautiful colors and patterns and sizes and shapes. And so I thought we could do a mindfulness of a leaf today.
Okay.
And basically the idea of a mindfulness of a leaf is to use all 5 senses in paying attention to this leaf, like as if it's almost like as if you pretend that you're an alien being dropped onto earth for the first time. You have no idea what this is, what it represents. You're just looking at it as it is, without judgment. I think you have a rock in your hand today that you could do that with as well, like as if you've never seen that rock before and you're not even sure what it's all about. So just taking that moment and being absorbed in this activity, you might start by feeling it out, feeling that rock or that leaf, and bringing words to mind that describe that feeling in a non-judgmental way. So mine is smooth. It's firm. It's a little ridgy. It's got some ridges. And it's smoother on the front side than it is on the back side. And anytime your mind wanders from the leaf, just acknowledge that thought you're having and bring it back to the leaf, just over and over again. Doesn't matter how many times you need to do that. Just coming back to the leaf. I love these veins on the leaf that I can trace with my fingers. Does your rock have colors in it or lines in it?
It does. It has lines and color, and the texture is kind of smooth around the edges, but still feels kind of rough.
Nice.
Skin, yeah.
Okay. And you might even, you might put it up to your nose and smell it. I tried that earlier. Okay, I do kind of smell a little bit of earthiness in my leaf.
Is that perhaps the smell of autumn?
I think that could be the smell of autumn. Yeah, just that little dampness that you get in the morning, the dirt that's damping up.
The very earthy
wind. Yeah, the earthy scent. Yeah. Yeah, and I wouldn't know this if I was an alien, but the smell, the just putting it up to my nose reminds me of being in that forest and being surrounded by that scent of cooling, of shedding, Yeah. Now I can hear, as I imagine, I can hear my feet tromping along the leaves in the forest and hearing that crunch, crunch, crunch. So I might, I can almost make that sound happen. I don't know if you guys can hear it. As I'm grasping and moving the leaf between my fingers, I can hear that crunching sound because this leaf actually is quite brittle.
Yeah.
It wasn't yesterday. It was so soft and so supple yesterday, but today it's quite brittle. So we're looking, we've smelt, we've listened, we've felt. I don't know about you, but I don't really want to taste my leaf.
No.
I guess I could.
I don't really want to lick my rock either.
That's right. Yeah. I guess if I was an alien, I probably would, because I might think it's food. Yeah. But I'm going to leave that to everyone to decide for themselves if they want to actually taste it. You could. It's not going to kill you, but yeah. So 5 senses focused on something, you know, it's beautiful when it's something from nature, but it doesn't have to be, you know. It can be something as simple as, you know, even just any office supply or anything that you have beside you, even a book. Just putting all five senses into that object, seeing it for what it is without judgment, and allowing any other thoughts, emotions, physical sensations to just, you know, move on while you bring your attention back to the object at
You
hand.
could actually do it on a piece of food or a piece of fruit.
Yeah, for sure. Remember we did that with the apple and the blueberry?
Yes,
That, yeah,
yes.
mindful eating. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Anything like that would
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
Well, that's a great example, actually.
Yeah, that brought back to me some really beautiful fall memories. So thank you for being involved with me as I did that activity.
Oh, you're welcome. It was good.
Yeah, it was nice. Yeah. Well, Steve, I guess that's it for us today.
All right. Thanks
Oh,
again, Melanie.
yeah, thank you. And I'll
You
see you
enjoy
next.
your week and have a good one. And think positive thoughts.
Yes, I will do that. That's right. Thank you. You too.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.